A story of expulsion, humiliation, and the billionaire who never forgot. What you're about to hear sounds impossible before Benjamin Torres became one of the most influential tech billionaires in Silicon Valley, worth $4.7 billion. Founder of Cloud Access Technologies, named to Forbes' most generous philanthropists list 3 years running. He was a 17-year-old honor student being escorted off campus by security guards while his classmates watched and whispered. His crime? Being poor. The expulsion happened on a Wednesday in March, third period, right in the middle of AP Calculus. The vice principal, Mr. Richard Pemberton, walked in with a security guard and called Ben's name. Every student in that classroom turned to stare. Ben knew immediately what this was about. The tuition letter. The final notice. The $8,400 his mother couldn't pay. "Mr. Torres, please gather your belongings and come with me." Ben's best friend, Marcus Chen, whispered. "Don't go, man. They can't do this." But they could. And they did. What nobody in that room knew, what Ben himself wouldn't understand for another 23 years, was that this moment of humiliation would become the driving force behind one of the most extraordinary philanthropic acts in American educational history. Because on a Tuesday morning in November, 23 years later, Benjamin Torres would wire $127 million to Westridge Academy, enough to cover full tuition for every single student, in perpetuity, funded through an endowment that would generate returns forever. Anonymous, untraceable, with only one condition: that no student would ever again be removed for inability to pay. The school's board of directors would spend months trying to identify their benefactor. Private investigators would be hired. Forensic accountants would trace the money through dozens of shell corporations and overseas accounts. They would never find him. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. First, you need to understand who Benjamin Torres was before that March morning broke him. Before humiliation turned into rage. Before rage turned into obsession. Before obsession turned into a $4.7 billion empire built on the simple principle that he would never, ever be powerless again. And before all of that, you need to understand the woman who sacrificed everything to give her son a chance he shouldn't have had in the first place. Benjamin Torres grew up in a one-bedroom apartment in East Los Angeles, in a building that smelled like cooking oil and had bars on every window. His mother, Rosa Torres, worked 3 jobs: morning shift at a laundromat, afternoon shift cleaning houses in Pasadena, evening shift at a 24-hour diner in Hollywood. Ben rarely saw her awake. He'd wake up at 6 a.m. to find her already gone, come home from school to an empty apartment, fall asleep to the sound of her key in the lock at 1 a.m., too late for conversation, too tired for anything but collapse. His father had left when Ben was 3, not dramatically, just stopped coming home one day. Rosa never talked about him. Ben learned not to ask. Money was a constant, crushing absence in their lives, not poverty that made for sympathetic news stories. They always had food, always made rent, always had clothes even if they came from goodwill. But there was never enough, never breathing room, never the luxury of a broken-down car or an emergency room visit or anything that wasn't strictly budgeted. Ben was 7 when he first understood how different his life was from other kids. A classmate's birthday party at a house in Silver Lake that had a pool in the backyard, just for one family. Ben had stared at it like it was a spaceship. "Your house is really big," he'd told the birthday boy Marcus Chen, whose parents owned a small but successful restaurant. "It's just normal," Marcus had said, shrugging. But it wasn't normal. Not to Ben. Normal was falling asleep listening to police sirens. Normal was stepping over needles on the way to the bus stop. Normal was watching his mother count pennies to make sure they could afford milk. Rosa noticed Ben's intelligence early. He taught himself to read at 4 by watching Sesame Street, could do multiplication in his head by 6, finished library books meant for middle schoolers by age 8. "You're going to go to college," Rosa told him on his 8th birthday, her voice fierce and certain. "You're going to be something, have choices I didn't have." "What if I'm not smart enough?" Ben had asked. "You're smart enough. You're more than smart enough. You just need opportunities." That became her mission, creating opportunities. She researched schools obsessively at the library during her breaks, found a magnet middle school that would bus Ben across the city, helped him with homework even though she'd only finished 10th grade herself, learning alongside him from his textbooks. When Ben was accepted to Westridge Academy for high school, a prestigious private school in Pasadena that offered financial aid, Rosa cried for the first time Ben could remember. "This is it," she whispered, holding the acceptance letter. "This is your door." What she didn't say, the financial aid covered 80% of tuition. The remaining 20%, $8,400 per year, might as well have been $84,000. They had no savings, no family who could help, no safety net. But Rosa Torres had 3 jobs and pure determination. She'd figure it out. For 3 years, she did. Worked extra shifts, sold her few pieces of jewelry, borrowed from predatory payday lenders at interest rates that should have been illegal, fell behind on everything else, rent, utilities, car insurance, to make tuition payments. Ben watched his mother destroy herself to keep him in that school, watched her lose weight she couldn't afford to lose because she was skipping meals, watched her hands crack and bleed from cleaning chemicals, watched exhaustion turn her old before her time. "Mom, I can transfer back to public school," Ben said when he was 16, finally understanding the cost. "No." Her voice was steel. "You're staying. You're graduating. You're going to college. That's not negotiable." "But, Benjamin, listen to me." She took his face in her rough hands. "I didn't have choices. Your father didn't care enough to stay and help. I've worked hard my whole life, and I'll never have anything. But you have a chance. A real chance. And I'll die before I let you throw that away." He stayed, guilt crushing him, studying obsessively because anything less would be an insult to her sacrifice. By senior year, Ben had a 4.0 GPA, near perfect SAT scores, AP courses in calculus, physics, computer science, college acceptance letters from MIT, Stanford, Carnegie Mellon, full scholarships that would cover everything. He just needed to graduate. 3 more months, that's all. But Rosa couldn't hold on that long. The final tuition payment was due February 1st. Rosa didn't have it. She'd borrowed everything she could, worked every available shift, even tried to sell their car, a 1987 Honda Civic, barely worth $400. February 1st came and went. A late notice arrived, then a final notice, then a letter stating that Benjamin Torres's enrollment would be terminated if payment wasn't received by March 15th. "I'll get it," Rosa promised. "I'll find a way." She tried everything, applied for loans and was denied. Too much debt, too little income. Asked her boss at the laundry for an advance and was refused. Even went to a loan shark who offered money at 40% interest, terms that would trap her for years. She took it anyway. But the loan took 10 days to process. It wouldn't clear until March 17th, 2 days too late. March 15th, 3rd period, AP Calculus. Ben was at the board solving a differential equation, explaining his work to the class when Vice Principal Pemberton walked in with security. "Mr. Torres, please gather your belongings and come with me." The room went silent, 32 students staring. Ben felt his face burn. "Can this wait until after class?" Ben asked quietly. "No. Now, please." Ben packed his backpack slowly, methodically. Didn't look at anyone. Could feel their eyes, their curiosity, their relief that it wasn't them being called out. Marcus Chen whispered, "This is bullshit, man." Mr. Pemberton's office was sterile and cold. The vice principal sat behind his desk, expression neutral professional. "Mr. Torres, I'm sorry, but due to non-payment of tuition fees, we have to terminate your enrollment effective immediately. My mom is getting the money. It'll be here in 2 days. The deadline was today. We've been more than flexible." 2 days, Ben repeated, voice shaking. "Just 2 more days. I've been here 3.5 years, straight A's. Never caused problems. I have college scholarships. I just need to graduate. I understand this is difficult, but school policy is clear. Outstanding balances must be paid by the deadline. You'll need to return your student ID, clear out your locker, and leave campus. Please." Ben hated how his voice cracked, hated begging, hated being powerless. "Please. I'll pay it back. Every cent. With interest. I'll get a job. The decision has been made. I'm sorry." The security guard, a man Ben had smiled at every morning for 3 years, escorted him to his locker. Students stared as he walked the hallway one last time. Some looked sympathetic. Most looked uncomfortable, grateful it wasn't them, wanting to look away from something embarrassing. At his locker, Ben mechanically removed his textbooks, binders, the scientific calculator his mother had scrimped to buy him. He left behind anything with the school logo. Didn't deserve to keep it now. His English teacher, Mrs. Patterson, caught him in the hallway. "Ben, I heard. This is outrageous. I'm going to talk to the administration." "Don't." Ben couldn't look at her. "It's fine. Thank you for everything. You're one of the brightest students I've ever taught. This is wrong." But wrong didn't matter. Policy mattered. Money mattered. Power mattered. The security guard walked him to the front gate. Ben stood there for a moment, looking back at the campus, at the future that had just been stolen from him. Then he walked away, backpack heavy with books that were suddenly worthless, and he made himself a promise. He would never be powerless again. Never beg again. Never be at anyone's mercy again. And someday, somehow, he would make Westridge Academy understand exactly what they'd done. What Ben didn't know yet was that this moment would define everything that came after, that the humiliation burning through him would become the fuel for 23 years of obsessive work, that the powerlessness would transform into an almost pathological need for control and success, and that when he finally had the power to exact revenge on the institution that had destroyed his dreams, he would do something nobody expected, something his 17-year-old self, walking away from those gates with tears of rage in his eyes, couldn't possibly have imagined. But that revelation was still 23 years away. First, Benjamin Torres had to survive the aftermath. Ben didn't tell his mother immediately. He went to the public library instead, sat in the computer section, and tried to think. His college scholarships required high school graduation. Without Westridge's diploma, he'd lose Stanford, MIT, Carnegie Mellon. Everything. He could transfer to public school for the last 3 months. Finish there. But it was mid-March. Transcripts would take weeks to transfer. He'd miss critical coursework. Might not graduate on time. Might lose the scholarships anyway. He was researching GED programs when his phone rang. His mother. "Mijo, the loan came through. I have the money. I'm going to the school now." "Don't?" Ben's voice was flat. "I'm already expelled." Silence. Then, "What?" "They expelled me this morning. It's done. But the money, I have it. We can pay. They don't care. They made an example. It's over, Mom." He heard her sob. Once. A sound that cut through him like glass. Then she pulled herself together with the steel he'd seen his whole life. "Come home. We'll figure this out. But there was nothing to figure out. Ben had been building toward this for 3.5 years. The elite education, the perfect grades, the scholarship offers. All of it built on a foundation of his mother's sacrifice. And now it was gone. That night, Rosa held him while he cried. Not gentle disappointment tears, huge, gasping sobs of grief and rage. "It's not fair," he kept saying. "It's not fair." "No," she agreed. "It's not. But fair doesn't matter. What matters is what you do next." "What can I do?" "Whatever it takes. You're brilliant, Benjamin. That doesn't change because of a piece of paper." But it did change. Everything changed. Ben enrolled in public school for his final semester, transferred to Roosevelt High School across the city, where nobody knew him or his story. He was invisible there, anonymous, which was both relief and fresh humiliation. The education was different. Not worse necessarily, but different. Larger classes, fewer resources, teachers who were doing their best with impossible ratios. Ben sat in the back and did the work mechanically, feeling like he was going through motions in someone else's life. His college scholarships evaporated. Stanford sent a polite rejection. Admission was contingent on graduating from Westridge Academy with the GPA he'd maintained there. His new school's transcript wouldn't meet their standards. MIT sent similar regrets. Carnegie Mellon kept him on a wait list that never materialized. He graduated in June with a Roosevelt diploma and no college prospects. Rosa cried at the ceremony, tears of pride mixed with grief for what should have been. "I'm sorry," she kept saying. "I'm so sorry, I couldn't." "Mom, stop! This isn't your fault." But the guilt ate at both of them. Rosa had destroyed herself financially and physically to keep him in Westridge, and Ben had failed to make it worth the sacrifice. He got a job at a computer repair shop in Koreatown, $12 an hour, fixing broken laptops and building custom PCs. It was mindless work that let him think, and what he thought about, constantly, obsessively, was what came next. He couldn't afford college now. Even community college tuition, minimal as it was, felt impossible with Rosa's debt situation. She was working 4 jobs now, trying to pay back the loan shark's predatory rates. But Ben could learn on his own. He started spending every free hour at the library, checking out computer science textbooks, teaching himself programming languages, Python, Java, C++, following online courses from MIT and Stanford, the schools that had rejected him, now offering their content for free. The irony was sharp. He could access the education. He just couldn't access the credentials. "What are you doing?" his coworker Miguel asked, finding Ben coding during his lunch break. "Learning." "For what?" "For whatever comes next." At 19, Ben built his first significant project, a program that automated computer diagnostics, identifying hardware and software issues faster than manual testing. He started using it at the repair shop, cutting diagnostic time from hours to minutes. His boss, Mr. Kim, noticed. "What is this program?" "Something I made. Makes the work faster." "Can you sell this to other repair shops?" Ben had never thought about it. Maybe? They packaged it as software as a service, $50 a month for small shops, $200 a month for larger operations. Ben built the website, handled customer support, improved the program based on feedback. Within 6 months, they had 47 customers. Ben's cut. 50% of profits, roughly $4,000 a month. It was more money than he'd ever seen. More than his mother made working 4 jobs. He paid off her loan shark debt first, then built up savings, then started planning something bigger. "You could sell this," Miguel told him, "like really sell it, to a big company." "Not yet. It's not good enough yet." But what Ben was really thinking, he wasn't ready yet. Didn't have the skills, the network, the knowledge to build something that could scale from thousands to millions. He needed to learn more, be better. He couldn't afford another failure. For 3 years, Ben lived in a storage unit turned into a makeshift apartment, technically illegal, but cheap, and worked obsessively. Days at the repair shop, nights coding, weekends studying computer science, business, finance, anything that might be useful. He taught himself enterprise software architecture from Stanford lectures, learned sales and marketing from YouTube videos, studied how tech companies scaled from TechCrunch articles and case studies. His social life disappeared. He was 21, an age when his former Westridge classmates were graduating from universities, getting prestigious internships, building networks. Ben was in a storage unit eating ramen and writing code that nobody except his 47 small business customers would ever see. But he was learning, absorbing everything, building skills that universities charged $200,000 to teach. At 22, he sold his diagnostic software to a larger tech company for $340,000. Not life-changing money in Silicon Valley terms, but astronomical for Ben. He gave Rosa $150,000, more money than she'd earn in 5 years. She cried, tried to refuse it. "Take it," Ben insisted. "Please. You destroyed yourself for me. Let me give some of that back. What will you do with the rest? Build something bigger." The year was 2008. The economy was collapsing. Tech startups were dying. Venture capital was freezing. Every business publication said it was the worst possible time to start a company. Ben thought they were wrong. "Everyone's scared," he told. Miguel over beers, one of maybe 5 social outings Ben had managed in 3 years. But businesses still need software. They're cutting staff, which means they need automation. They're desperate for efficiency. This is exactly when they'll buy. "So what are you building?" "Cloud-based business management software. Accounting, inventory, customer relationship management, all integrated. Affordable for small businesses, but scalable." That exists. Salesforce, NetSuite, those cost thousands per month. I'm targeting businesses that can't afford those. The companies everyone ignores because they're too small. There are millions of them. Miguel looked skeptical. "You're competing with billion-dollar companies." "No, I'm serving customers those companies won't touch." It was classic innovator's dilemma. Large companies ignored the low end because margins were thin. But the low end was enormous. And if Ben could serve it efficiently, build loyalty, ride businesses as they grew. He called it Cloud Access. Spent 6 months building the minimum viable product. Launched it at $99 a month for small businesses. Got his first customer, a small restaurant, through Mr. Kim's network. Then his second, his fifth, his 20th. The growth was slow but steady. Ben reinvested every dollar into development and marketing. Lived on ramen. Kept working nights at the repair shop to cover personal expenses. Slept 4 hours a night. His 23rd birthday passed, barely noticed. He was too busy coding new features, handling customer support, fixing bugs, doing everything himself because he couldn't afford employees yet. Rosa worried. "You look terrible. Thin. Exhausted. Is this worth it?" "It's going to be," Ben promised. "Trust me." By year 2, Cloud Access had 200 customers and $140,000 in monthly recurring revenue. Ben finally hired his first employee, a customer support specialist, and rented actual office space, a tiny room above a dry cleaner. Tech blogs started noticing. Cloud Access, the bootstrap success story serving businesses. Big tech ignores. The attention brought more customers. Revenue hit $300,000 a month, then $500,000. Ben was 25. Cloud Access was profitable, growing, sustainable. He was also exhausted, running on fumes, making mistakes, missing edge cases and code that created security vulnerabilities, losing customers to shoddy implementation. And then a major competitor noticed him. TechFlow Solutions, a mid-sized enterprise software company, launched a direct cloud access clone at $79 a month, undercutting his pricing, with better features, bigger team, more resources. Ben watched his customer growth stall, then reverse. People were leaving for TechFlow. His revenue dropped from $500,000 a month to $420,000, then $380,000. You should sell, his new CFO, hired at $60,000 a year, a huge expense, advised. TechFlow might buy you just to eliminate competition. Take the money. You've won. How is this winning? They copied me, and they're beating me. You're 25 with a profitable business. That's winning. But it didn't feel like winning. It felt like Westridge all over again, like he'd built something meaningful and someone with more resources had taken it away. Ben considered selling. TechFlow offered $4.2 million, life-changing money. His mother would never have to work again. He could rest, start over, try something new. Take it, Rosa urged. You've done amazing things. You don't have to destroy yourself. Ben thought about 17-year-old him, walking away from Westridge's gates, making a promise to never be powerless again. $4.2 million wasn't powerless, but it wasn't powerful either. It was comfortable, safe, ordinary. And Benjamin Torres had sacrificed too much to be ordinary. He turned down the offer. Then what's the plan? His CFO asked. We build something TechFlow can't copy, something so technically difficult, so innovative, that we're not competing on price. We're competing on capability. With what resources? They have 50 times our budget. With the resource they don't have, desperation. Ben spent 6 months rebuilding Cloud Access from the ground up, not just improving it, fundamentally reimagining it. He introduced AI-driven automation for routine business tasks, predictive analytics that helped small businesses forecast revenue, integration systems that connected Cloud Access to every major business platform seamlessly. It was technically ambitious, maybe too ambitious. He was coding 18-hour days again, surviving on coffee and spite. His small team thought he was insane. We can't deliver all this, his lead developer said. It's too much, too complicated. Then we fail trying, better than failing by giving up. The new Cloud Access launched when Ben was 26. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Small businesses saw the automation and analytics as revolutionary, features that had only existed in enterprise software, costing thousands per month, now available for $199 a month. Revenue exploded. $500,000 a month, then $800,000, then $1.4 million. Ben hired aggressively. Developers, sales team, customer success. Within a year, Cloud Access had 70 employees and revenue of $2.8 million monthly. He was 27. Cloud Access was valued at $80 million by venture capitalists suddenly interested in investing. Ben took their money, $15 million at a $90 million valuation, used it to scale faster. By 28, Cloud Access served 45,000 businesses and generated $140 million in annual recurring revenue. Ben's personal stake, 70% of the company after VC dilution, was worth approximately $600 million on paper. He'd gone from expelled student to near billionaire in 11 years. But the cost was becoming apparent. Ben rarely saw his mother, rarely saw anyone. His entire life was Cloud Access. Every waking moment dedicated to growth, to beating competitors, to proving something to ghosts of people who'd once had power over him. You look sick, Rosa told him during one of their increasingly rare dinners. When's the last time you took a day off? I don't need days off. Everyone needs days off. You're 30 years old, and you look 50. Mom, I didn't sacrifice everything so you could destroy yourself. I wanted you to have choices, options, happiness. I am happy. Cloud Access is a company. It's not a life. But for Ben, it was. The company was the proof that he'd overcome Westridge's rejection, that he'd transcended their judgment, that poor kids who got humiliated and expelled could still build empires. At 32, Cloud Access went public. The IPO raised $400 million at a $4.2 billion valuation. Ben's stake, $2.8 billion. Forbes ran a profile. Benjamin Torres, from expelled student to tech billionaire. The article detailed his Westridge expulsion, his rise through pure determination, his disruption of the enterprise software industry. The irony, the school that expelled him was now celebrating their famous alumnus. Westridge's website featured him in their notable alumni section. The administration sent a letter congratulating him on his success, conveniently forgetting they'd kicked him out 17 years earlier. You should sue them, his lawyer suggested, or at least demand an apology. But Ben didn't want apologies. He wanted something else, something he couldn't quite articulate yet. At 35, Ben had everything by conventional metrics, worth $4.7 billion. CEO of a public company serving hundreds of thousands of businesses, featured on magazine covers, invited to speak at conferences, and completely, utterly miserable. He couldn't sleep. Worked until exhaustion, then lay awake replaying old humiliations. The walk from Westridge with security escort, his mother's tears. The promise he'd made to never be powerless. He'd achieved the revenge, built the empire, proven everyone wrong. So why did it still hurt? You need therapy, his executive assistant suggested, after finding him in the office at 4 a.m. for the 5th time that month. I need to work. You need to process whatever you're running from. He did finally go to therapy, sat in an expensive office overlooking San Francisco Bay, paying $400 an hour to a psychiatrist who listened to his story and said, "So you spent 20 years punishing yourself for being expelled, destroying your health, your relationships, your peace. For what? To prove they were wrong about me. Who was wrong? Westridge, Pemberton, everyone who watched me get expelled and did nothing. And have you proven them wrong? Obviously. I'm worth billions. And do you feel proven?" Ben didn't answer. Couldn't answer. The need to prove your worth comes from believing you lack it, the therapist said gently. You've spent 20 years trying to earn something you always had, and you still don't believe it. That session broke something open, made Ben realize he'd achieved everything except the only thing that mattered. He'd never forgiven himself for failing his mother, for not being smart enough, resourceful enough, powerful enough to keep them both at Westridge. He'd built an empire as penance for sins that were never his to carry. Ben started doing the math. Westridge Academy had approximately 800 students. Annual tuition, $42,000. Total, $33.6 million per year. A $127 million endowment, invested conservatively at 5% annual returns, would generate $6.35 million yearly. Not enough for full tuition for everyone, but enough for substantial support. He could fund the remainder from ongoing donations. Actually, he could just give them $200 million sort, make the endowment absurdly well-funded, ensure no student ever faced what he'd faced. It would be anonymous, no credit, no naming rights, no press coverage, just the certain knowledge that Westridge Academy would never expel another student for poverty. Why anonymous? His CFO asked when Ben instructed him to set up the donation structure. You could get massive goodwill, PR value alone, because it's not about me. Then what is it about? 17-year-old me, and every other kid who's smart enough and works hard enough but doesn't have the money. You know they'll figure it out eventually. Everyone knows you're their most successful alumnus. Let them figure it out. But I'm not announcing it. The transaction took 3 months to structure properly. Shell corporations, offshore accounts, legal barriers that would make tracing nearly impossible. $127 million moved in carefully orchestrated steps. On a Tuesday morning in November, Westridge Academy's board of directors received notice that their financial situation had fundamentally changed. The news hit education circles like a bomb. Anonymous donor gives $127 million to private academy. Full tuition coverage for every student, forever. No strings attached except one. No student could be expelled for financial reasons. Westridge's administration was stunned, grateful, confused. Who would give that much money anonymously? The investigation started immediately. Forensic accountants traced the money through 17 different corporate structures across 6 countries. Hit dead ends everywhere. Whoever did this knew how to hide money. The media speculated wildly. Tech billionaire, Hollywood mogul, lottery winner with Westridge connections. Ben watched the coverage from his office, feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not satisfaction. Not vindication. Just quiet peace. His phone rang. Rosa, did you see the news about your old school? I saw. Someone gave them enough money that no kid will be kicked out for being poor. I know, Mom. Silence. Then, very quietly, Benjamin, was that you? I can't talk about it. Oh, mijo. Her voice broke. You didn't need to do that. You don't owe them anything. I didn't do it for them. I did it for every kid like me, who's smart enough and works hard enough but doesn't have the money, who has a mom, killing herself to give them opportunities. I did it so no other 17-year-old gets walked off campus by security because his mother couldn't make a payment on time. Rosa was crying. I'm so proud of you. Your whole life, I'm so proud. I should have been able to keep us at Westridge. Should have found a way. No. You were a child. It was never your job to solve adult problems. But you survived it. You built something extraordinary. And now you're making sure it doesn't happen to anyone else. That's more than survival. That's healing. Westridge Academy tried everything to identify their benefactor. Private investigators, legal requests for information, appeals to the mysterious donor to reveal themselves. Nothing worked. The school had no choice but to move forward. They restructured their financial aid program, eliminated tuition fees for families earning under $150,000, reduced fees drastically for everyone else, used the endowment to guarantee that no student would ever be removed for financial reasons. Applications to Westridge exploded. Families who'd never dreamed of affording private education applied. The student body diversified dramatically, economically, racially, in every dimension. The school became something it had never been before, genuinely accessible. Vice Principal Richard Pemberton, still working at Westridge, now in his 60s, was interviewed for an article about the transformation. This donation has allowed us to fulfill our mission in ways we never could before, he said. We're able to accept students purely on merit, regardless of financial circumstances. It's what education should always be. Ben watched the interview and felt nothing toward Pemberton. No anger, no desire for confrontation. The man was irrelevant. He'd been following policy, not making it. The system was the villain, not its functionaries. But someone else was watching too, and connecting dots. Marcus Chen, Ben's best friend from Westridge, the one who'd whispered, "Don't go," when security came for him, was now an investigative journalist for Bloomberg. He'd been following the Westridge story closely. Something about it nagged at him. He started researching Westridge alumni who'd become wealthy. Most had done well, but not donate $127 million anonymously well. Except one, Benjamin Torres. Marcus requested an interview ostensibly about Cloud Access's business model. Ben, who rarely did press, agreed because it was Marcus. They met at a coffee shop in Palo Alto, the first time they'd seen each other in 20 years. "You look successful," Marcus said. You look like a journalist who's about to ask uncomfortable questions. Marcus laughed. I am. But first, real talk. Why'd you disappear? After the expulsion, I tried to find you. You vanished. I was busy being angry and poor. For 20 years? Anger takes time to process. They talked for an hour. Cloud Access's growth, the challenges of scaling, industry trends, normal interview stuff. Then Marcus asked, off the record, was it you? Was what me? Westridge, the donation. I've been researching for 3 months, every wealthy alumnus. You're the only one who fits. Made enough money recently, has reason to care deeply, and has the technical sophistication to hide money that thoroughly. Ben looked at his oldest friend, the one person from Westridge who'd shown him loyalty. Off the record? Completely off the record. Yeah, it was me. Marcus sat back, whistling softly. Holy shit. Why anonymous? Because I didn't do it for recognition. I did it. So what happened to me never happens to anyone else. You know they'll figure it out eventually. Maybe. Or maybe it stays anonymous forever. Either way, it's done. Can I ask why now? Why not 5 years ago? 10. Ben thought about it. Because 5 years ago I was still angry, still trying to prove something. I would have done it publicly, made a spectacle, forced them to acknowledge how wrong they were. Now I don't care about that. I just care about the kids who need it. That's growth, Marcus said. That's therapy, Ben corrected. Lots of expensive therapy. The truth did eventually come out, 18 months later. A different journalist traced the money through a mistake in one of the shell corporations. Ben's identity as the donor became public. The response was overwhelming. Praise from education advocates, media requesting interviews, Westridge inviting him to speak at graduation, to join the board of directors, to have buildings named after him. Ben declined everything, released one brief statement through his PR team. I was expelled from Westridge Academy 23 years ago because my mother couldn't afford tuition. That experience taught me about systemic inequality and the arbitrary barriers that prevent talented students from accessing opportunity. I made this donation to ensure no student faces that barrier again. I request no recognition and decline all speaking engagements. The focus should be on the students who benefit, not on the donor. Rosa read the statement and called him immediately. You're handling this well. I'm trying. Your younger self would be proud. The angry boy who got expelled. He'd be proud of the man you became. I don't know. Younger me wanted revenge. This isn't revenge. No, Rosa agreed. It's better. Revenge would have been destroying them. This is healing them. That's much harder. Much braver. Ben reduced his role at Cloud Access, promoting his COO to CEO while remaining executive chairman. He spent more time with Rosa, started a foundation focused on education access, funded scholarships at dozens of schools beyond Westridge. In interviews, the few he granted, he talked about the lessons of his journey. Westridge didn't expel me because individuals were evil. They expelled me because the system required it. But systems are created by people, which means people can change them. Don't rage against institutions. Change them. I spent 20 years trying to prove Westridge wrong, building Cloud Access, making billions, all to show them I was worthy. But worth isn't proven. It just is. The moment I understood that, I stopped needing revenge. Being expelled was devastating. It could have broken me permanently. Instead, it became my motivation. Not for revenge, but for making sure others didn't experience the same trauma. Your worst moment can become your greatest purpose. I was worth billions, and miserable, because I was succeeding at the wrong goals. I was building wealth to prove I wasn't powerless. But power is useless if you're still carrying the same pain. You have to heal to truly succeed. I could have announced the donation, gotten credit, had buildings named after me. But that would have been about my ego, not about the students. The purest help expects nothing in return. At 41, Ben sits in his modest house in Palo Alto. He could afford mansions but prefers simplicity, and thinks about the journey. From expelled student to billionaire, from anger to healing, from proving worth to understanding it was always there. Was it worth it? The 20 years of obsessive work, the relationships sacrificed, the health neglected, the single-minded focus on building cloud access. He honestly doesn't know. The donation helped hundreds of students. Cloud Access provides software to millions of small businesses. He's created jobs, generated wealth, solved problems. By any objective measure, he's made the world better. But he also spent his 20s alone and angry. Missed potential friendships. Never had romantic relationships because he was too consumed by work. Developed stress-related health problems that will follow him forever. Do you regret it? His therapist asks during a recent session. I regret the cost, but I don't know if I'd change it. Without the expulsion, without the anger, would I have built Cloud Access? Would I have had the motivation to work that hard? Do you need trauma to be successful? I don't know. Maybe that's what I've been telling myself to make the trauma worthwhile. Maybe I would have been just as successful from a place of happiness instead of proving something. And now? Now I'm trying to figure out what success means without revenge as motivation. Who am I if I'm not trying to prove I'm worthy? That's the real work, the therapist says. The billions were the easy part. The Benjamin Torres Education Foundation, named publicly despite his preference for anonymity, because Rosa insisted people need to know who helped them, has funded full scholarships for 4,700 students across the country. Focuses specifically on high-achieving students from low-income families. Covers not just tuition, but living expenses, books, everything. Westridge Academy has transformed completely. The student body is 60% students of color, 45% from families earning under $100,000. The academic quality has actually improved. Turns out when you select purely on merit rather than ability to pay, you get more talented students. Vice Principal Pemberton retired last year. In his farewell speech, he said, "I've made many decisions in my career. Some I'm proud of. Some I regret. The expulsion of Benjamin Torres is something I'll regret until I die. But his response, his generosity despite how we treated him, has taught me more about grace than any policy manual ever could." Ben didn't attend the speech, but Marcus sent him a recording. "How do you feel watching that?" Marcus asked. "Sad for younger me, grateful for current me, hopeful for future students who won't experience what I did." That's pretty healthy. Therapy's expensive, but effective. On the 25th anniversary of his expulsion, Ben walks onto Westridge Academy's campus for the first time since security escorted him out. He's speaking at graduation, finally accepted after declining 5 previous invitations. He stands at the podium, looking at 800 students who have no idea what this place means to him. The vice principal, Pemberton's replacement, introduces him warmly. Ben looks at the graduating seniors, many of whom are here because of his donation, though they don't know it. 25 years ago, I was expelled from this school for being poor, he begins. It was the most humiliating moment of my life. I was walked off campus by security while classmates watched. I lost my college scholarships. I lost my future, or so I thought. The audience is silent. I spent 20 years angry about that. Built a company worth billions partly to prove you all wrong, to prove I was worthy despite what happened. And then I realized I was always worthy. The expulsion didn't change that. The billions didn't create it. Worth isn't earned. It just is. He pauses, looking at faces young and hopeful and terrified of their futures. Some of you are here because you can afford to be. Some are here because someone made sure you could afford to be. Neither makes you more or less worthy. What matters is what you do with the opportunity, how you treat people with less power than you, whether you build systems that elevate or exclude. I was excluded. It hurt. It shaped me. And eventually, it taught me that the only response to exclusion is to make sure nobody else experiences it. Not revenge, not bitterness, just making the system better. So graduates, be worthy not by proving it, but by living it. Be generous not for recognition, but because it's right. Build things not to show you can, but because they're needed. And remember that your worth isn't in your achievements, it's in your humanity, he finishes. The applause is thunderous. Students stand. Faculty weeps. Ben walks off the stage and straight to his car. Doesn't stay for the ceremony. Doesn't accept congratulations. Just drives home to have dinner with Rosa, who's now 73, and finally retired after he bought her a small house in Pasadena. How was it? She asks over the pasta she insisted on making despite his offers to hire a chef. Weird, cathartic, final. Final? Yeah, I think I'm done with Westridge. Finished that chapter. I don't need to go back again. What will you do now? I have no idea, Ben admits. For 25 years I knew exactly what I was doing, proving I was worthy despite being expelled. Now I know I was always worthy. So what's next? Living, Rosa says simply. Just living. Being happy. Maybe dating. Definitely taking vacations. Experiencing life instead of grinding through it. That sounds terrifying. Good. It should be. You've been comfortable with struggle. Try being comfortable with peace. Ben thinks about that. Peace. The thing he's spent 25 years running from, thinking he needed to earn it through achievement. Maybe Rose is right. Maybe the hardest challenge isn't building billion-dollar companies or making transformative donations. Maybe it's just sitting still, being present, accepting that you're enough exactly as you are. That night, Ben sits in his backyard, looking at stars, thinking about the journey. From expelled student to billionaire to philanthropist to... what? Just Ben. Just a guy who got knocked down hard and chose to help others up instead of stepping on them. Who turned pain into purpose. Who learned that worth isn't proven but lived. It's not a perfect ending. He still struggles with workaholism. Still has nightmares about that security escort. Still fights the voice that says he needs to achieve more to be enough. But he's working on it. One therapy session at a time. One day of choosing presence over productivity. One moment of accepting that the scared 17-year-old boy doesn't need saving anymore. He grew up. He survived. He built something meaningful. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. The debt is repaid. Not to Westridge. They never really mattered. But to himself. To the boy who deserved better. To every student who comes after him. The debt is repaid. And Benjamin Torres is finally free.